few sessions will have to do with report manager and different functions in that. As always, we do our Keystroke Live Wednesdays at 10 o'clock. Same place, same time, same number. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the bullet points first, and we'll kind of jump back and forth within the Keystroke program. Today we're really going to be talking more or less about the basics of editing reports, showing you a few functions and some tricks. I did want to point out first that Label Manager in Keystroke and Report Manager use the same report engine, and everybody that runs Keystroke POS can edit labels, but to edit reports you do need advanced POS. So you won't be able to edit reports without a dealer copy or advanced POS for your customer. And we can always provide a service, a paper service, if they want to pay for us to kind of customize a report for them. But we'd like to leave that up to you, our resellers. We got the third bullet point talking about there could be some frustration if you've never edited reports in the past. Formatting columns and making space for other columns is kind of an art form. And I kind of put in here that it takes a little bit of practice and a lot of patience. So I'll show you an example of that when we go look at a sales analysis report that has a lot of columns. If you move one thing over, you've got a lot of numbers that skew off to the side. And then we'll come back to this and talk about some tricks. I'm going to be using some of the tricks in Report Manager here. This is for our reference right now. F3 twice in the report settings. I'll show you that in a second. It takes us right to the editing mode. We don't have to click and highlight and hit F3 a couple times. It's very easy. You'll see me use Shift F10 to run the report automatically right while I'm editing the report, so I don't have to F10 to save it, go say OK, and then add in a date and time range again and watch the same report come up. That saves a lot of time. We can change different fields. The control left and right arrows will change the field's width. Control Shift with the left and right arrows will change its track, or that's the spaces before. And we used to use left, center, and right justified, but now Control C is used for the copy command for Windows. So we use Control L, E, and R to change alignment. And we will bounce back and forth into the F1 help screens. When you get down into very specific things like formulas, barcoding, or operators, nobody can remember all the tricks. So basically F1 help is the way to go. Well, let me jump into Keystroke, and I'm going to first show you a thing about formatting columns, and you'll see some difficulties that come up when you try to add or change things around. I'm going to hit Escape here, and I am now in Keystroke Point of Sale. It should come up shortly for you. I'm going to do an inventory sales analysis report to the screen. I'm just going to use some save settings. I'm going to leave this on the screen just long enough so you can see the screen change. This is actually just a grouping by department. It's a cost and profit report. I'm going to go ahead and run this right now. And I'm going to put it in old date range just to show you where we're going to start from. This is a one-page report, and here it has about 5 columns or 6 columns of numbers and then a percentage at the end. It also has space for the description and the code. I'm getting back to the point about adding columns or moving things left or right. If we start doing things like that in the report editor, you're going to see how the columns will get skewed. So if you haven't had a chance to see this report on the screen, please someone chat me and let me know, but I'm going to hit Escape and it should take me back to Keystroke. So now I'm looking at my report settings screen. One of our tricks, I could always click on the form button here to show me my list of forms, and I can always hit F3 to edit the form. One of my first tricks I want to show you is if I'm back on this screen and let's say I might have just selected report on sales invoices, and I say OK, so now my cursor's on the first grouping. Sure, I could click the form and then hit F3, or if I was inside of somewhere else or clicking on a checkbox, trick number 1 is to hit F3 twice from anywhere in the screen F3 brings up the list automatically. F3 a second time will bring up the report editor form. So here's a common thing that people want to do. They want to change field widths. I'm not going to spend too much time on the details of many of these reports. You always want to start with one report and kind of go with it. But let's talk about this. If I wanted to change the inventory description to add some more characters, let's say we now can support up to 32 characters for description. Let me go ahead and hit enter on this. And of course I can just up arrow to the width and change it to 32. I could always just use the tab keys to get around. But some of the tricks here are to change the spaces before, the width, or the alignment from another screen. So meaning I don't need to be in this box to change it, and I'll show you how this speeds things up in the report editing realm. If I hit escape, let's say I'm right here, I'm going to use my control key and the right arrow. I'm going to do it twice, and you'll see the number 30, which is the width, change to 32. So I've hit control right arrow. So right there I've made one change, and I want to see it. Of course I could hit F10 to save it. I'd have to give it a different file name. The file name can't start with a 0. Those are our standard forms, and we don't let you overwrite them. But I don't need to save it to actually run it, because I've already run it once, so it knows my date and time range, and it knows what my criteria was last set at. So all I need to do is hit Shift and F10. And then it prints this report to the screen. So immediately I can make one change and realize, yes, the description got longer, but what it did is it moved a couple of the other fields over by 2 characters. Now notice that the subtotals aren't aligning up, nor are the grand totals down here on this bottom line. So I can hit escape here. One solution would be to go back and say, oh, if I didn't want to do that, that's too much work. So I could do control left arrow and change 30 back to 32. But let's move a little forward on this idea. If I go from 2 and 30, let's go back to 32. I just have to find the subtotal areas and change them too. And this is going to be the part that takes practice and patience. Notice that the total quantity, there is no description or stock number. So all I need to do is change the spaces before to move over by 2. So I'm going to use Control Shift right arrow. The number 55 just turned to 57. I don't need to save this report. I can run it right now to the screen by hitting Shift F10. And again, if this goes too fast on the delay, you can chat me and let me slow down a little bit. There we go. So I've made 2 changes on the width. I've actually increased this description field. I've aligned up most everything now. Now the subtotals for the stock numbers have lined up. But I'm still missing down here at the bottom where you see quantity of 43. The subtotals for the quantity have not lined up. So I can hit escape to go back to my editing. And notice I haven't saved the report any. I'm just using some of the hotkeys. And I go down to the grand totals and realize that down here I also need to hit Control Shift right arrow, change 55 to 57. Shift F10. This might go a little fast. I'll slow down a little bit. So now I've got everything to line up. So that's one of the pitfalls, but keep in mind it can be done just with practice, that most reports have different subtotals, and you might not even notice that you've made a change that kind of skews everything until you actually check your grouping by department, grouping by customers, and so forth. So there's an example of a little bit of skill, practice, and patience. You can make some changes to a report. I'm going to hit escape here. If I try to save this report, because let's say yes, I like it, I should do 2 things. First of all, if I hit F10 to try to save it, it's going to tell me that the numbers that start with 0 are reserved. If you didn't know this, you will be told. And it takes you right up to the file name field. And you can start with anything you'd like I can put in 9 is common here in the office. We make a lot of reports. You could just start with 1s for, let's say, your company, or you might have different clients, and you might be having a lot of different reports. You wouldn't want like 1,000 to overwrite somebody else's, so you might use a 2, or you might go with like 11, 12, 13, whatever you want to do. I also recommend changing the description. Then we hit F10 to save it. I've already played with this earlier. I am going to overwrite what I've already made. If you didn't want to, you could change its name. Now it's on my list to be used and or emailed to a client. And then I can go ahead and say OK to all these and tab down. But you see, you don't have to actually test the report. You can actually do all the testing within the report editor itself with some of those hotkeys. I'm going to go back now. We're going to take a look at another idea here about a customer mailing list. This is like an email list here. This is our standard customer email list. Notice these different forms we have. We have an email list. We have an email list with alternate. Phone lists are very common. So I'll go ahead and just use the email list as an example. We'll print this to the screen. And of course, Keystroke can hold, I think, up to 52 characters for an email address. This report, I think, cuts things off at around 40-something. So you might find, oh, I need to kind of move some columns around here. Luckily, this report doesn't have, let's call it subtotals. There is no subtotal for a customer email list. So you don't have to worry about alignment issues. So let's go back and edit this report. Again, from this screen here, I hit F3 twice. That's the hotkey to get. F3 once to get to your list. F3 a second time takes you right to the report. So of course I could do things like, well, I can just make the lookup name shorter. So I can use Control left arrow, take out a few spaces here. I'm going to take out 4, and then I want to make this width from 38. I'm going to increase it to 42. Oh, let's make it 44. Again, right here, before saving it as a new file, I can just hit Shift F10. And you can see, hey, I'm getting closer. I'm getting most everything on there. I'm still kind of short, still running off the edge. If I make any more changes, I'm going to lose the ability to, I'm going to cut off names or cut off emails. So you might choose to, I call this, flip this into landscape mode. Very easy to do. Don't worry about all the stuff down here. Just come right up to the width of the form and change it to a number greater than 128. I think 128 is the magic number that turns everything into landscape and prints condensed for you. So we're going to make that one change of 128. I'm going to hit Shift F10. And now this report has turned into landscape, and basically I call it, it's given me more real estate, more to work with. So one little change there has turned this into a landscape report in condensed, because Keystroke's report engine knows what to do with that. So now I can start maybe adding those spaces back in and fixing a few things. So I'll come down here to look to the lookup name, and I'm going to give it 32 characters because I know that the lookup name can be that as a maximum. I think 52 is the maximum email length. I'll just hit Shift F10. Now I've got kind of a report that looks good, and now that I've realized I have more landscape, I have more things to put in there, well, maybe I wanted something with more of an address list with an email list. So I can, and we have actually an address list with the phone number, but not an address list with an email list. So thought we had one of those. So let's talk about some other hotkeys. I want to add some things after the lookup name. So I'll highlight the email. I want to insert some fields in between there. So I'm going to hit Insert here. This is the screen here where it talks about what fields to select and so forth, and all these different options about alignment and heading and so forth. We'll get into some alignment codes in a minute here. So I'm going to just select the customer's address. So I've come down, I found customer address. I'm going to select that. I'm going to give it a width that I think might be appropriate, maybe 30 or 32. Again, I have more real estate now that I'm in landscape mode. I don't have to worry about it. I'm going to put in a header. And I'm going to say OK to this. And let's just stop there. I'm going to hit Shift F10. I hit F10, by the way, to save that, if you didn't see. Shift F10 to run the report as is to the screen. So I go, great. Hey, I'm getting closer. I've got an address, but oh, I forgot the zip code. and the city-state. So I'm going to hit escape to go right back to where it was. After the address, yes, after the address, I want to insert, or it's also Control-Enter is another way to insert lines, but the insert key also works. I'm going to hit field. I want to show you something about calculated fields. These are fields that don't really exist in the database, but Keystroke makes these up right at the time of the report. So in here we have just a few for customers, but you'll have more things for what we call like an inventory analysis report, has percent profits and so forth, which is doing some calculations in the background. So I can use this field called city, state, zip. It's a calculated field. Of course, it's 3 fields put together with commas and spaces appropriately. I can give it a width that might be sufficient enough. I think 24. Let's go 30. Let's see what we get. And I should give it a heading. I can call it anything I want. I think I'll just put slashes in mine today. I could put comma, space, and so forth. So we've added this in to this. I'm going to go ahead. And by the way, the Shift F10 is the same as hitting the test print in the lower left. Shift F10, but I don't have to click anything. I'm more of a keyboard guy when I'm working on these kind of things, that I don't have to take my hands off the keyboard. That's just me. So Shift F10. There we've got a kind of a nice report, but it looks like I've kind of overblown the parameters of a landscape page to my printer. By the way, this is looking at our default printer in the office and formatting it accordingly. We've all probably run reports by accident and it looks like it's trying to print on a receipt printer. It's usually your default printer in Windows isn't set to a full-page printer. But this would be a little bit inconvenient. This would be a little incorrect, so I might, looking at my list, I might steal some spaces from the address and the customer name. So let's go to the address field right here, make it a little smaller. Control left arrow. I'll take out 2 there. City, state, and zip looks pretty good. The lookup name, I'll take a couple out of there. And let's go up here. I'm going to change this 128 to like 144. That's just where the lines, how many, it appears that I have about 140 or so lines. I'm going to hit Shift F10. So we're getting a lot closer. I decided to use a very long email address to show what can happen. And actually you'll see after 44, we're really running out of space, so I would have to back down some more of these fields. Looks like the address can get like 2 smaller, and maybe again the customer name 2 smaller. So let's do that. Control left arrow, Shift F10. Good enough for me. I think it's good. There will be a day things will run off the edge. We might have to adjust it, or let's say take out the whole customer number. Who needs that anyhow? So let's go back. Last step will be to hit escape and then save it. Again, if I hit F10, it's going to tell me I can't save it with this name. So in our business, we just like to put like a 9 after it and actually change it to something different. Whoops. There we go. I'm going to hit OK or F10. And I just changed the name because if I had 5 flavors of an email list, it would all say email list. I wouldn't know what I'm looking for. Then I select it. Now when I run this report, the save settings will go ahead and take it from there. Let me go ahead and talk about some more features. I'm going to use the same report on the form. I'm going to look at a field here. Let's go like the lookup name. Actually, what I think I'm going to do is a good example here. I'm going to go to Label Manager. So let me bounce around quickly. You probably won't see it change. Label Manager, remember, all of our programs from Express all the way up will allow you to edit label forms. But report editing requires advanced POS. So here I'm going to actually do, these are price tags. I'm going to do individual price tags. I like the barcode form to show us a good example. Let's do this one here. It's very common. I'm going to print this to the screen. Let's see, prompt for quantity. Yep. So this is actually set to pick items one by one and then prompt for a quantity. And then it comes back and asks if I'd like to print some other stuff. So I'll pick one of these and just print a few of those. Now it hasn't done printing. Don't know if you can see in the background. It's waiting for me to finish, but I'm going to hit escape. And then the finished product comes up on the screen. So hopefully at this time you can see the report editor printing to the screen with barcodes on it. The reason why I'm bringing you in here is to show you that the F1 help screen will have some good information about types of barcode and how to make barcodes bigger and smaller and so forth. A lot of people try to make very small tags, 1-inch wide tags, so some of these barcodes get very large and so forth. And notice a number like this that starts with a 0 and has 11 or 12 characters has a larger barcode than a smaller number. Later on, maybe I'll show you if you put in words and try to barcode words with, let's say, code 128, barcodes get very large and they probably run off the label. So that's why we have other options. We can actually barcode the stock number like 121. But let's take a look at editing this form. So go back to my item. So I'm right on this screen. I can hit F3 twice, same exact thing as in report editor. Brings up the list. F3 a second time brings up what we're barcoding. Well, a lot of people call and ask, hey, I want this to be a UPCA barcode, or I want this to be a very small code 3 of 9 barcode. So we could hit enter on this or F3 to edit this line. And you'll say, well, what does this alignment mean? B8321, how would anybody know? Well, if you're in that field and you hit F1, I'm going to have to switch screens here. I'm going to show you the F1 screen. So shortly you should see the F1 help screen, and notice how it comes up and it talks about the alignment field. That's because I was in the alignment field. Don't try to be in report editor and try to find out about alignment unless you're in that field, because it's hard to navigate the index. Let's put it that way. Anyhow, it shows us some information. It talks about the B code for barcode in the alignment. So if I click on B for barcode, it tells me lots of information about the help on barcode. And I know down here it says to print a field as a barcode, edit the report field, go to the alignment field, and then enter B followed by a code representing the format. So if I click on this link, it talks about the different forms. I'm using actually code 128, which can actually use numbers and letters and a lot of special characters. There are some restricted characters, I think, like asterisks and the exclamation points that don't work. I can print a code 39 or 3 of 9. That's a code that's pretty common for also alphanumeric characters. Some people want it just to be UPCA. So I can put in a number 1 here, and let's try that. So if I just hit escape here, go back to this field, I'm going to change the 8 to a 1 and leave the rest the same, and I'll come back shortly and show you the others. Let's print this to the screen. Shift F10. And this might take a while to get back on here. I'm going to print something else right here. Looks like 6 of these. Okay, hopefully I'm showing this screen correctly. So it looks like the barcode, let me ask Nick here. Hey Nick, can you see the report editor screen?
Yes, not the report editor. We're looking at the copy of the report still in the report viewer.
I used the wrong term. Right, this is the labels with the barcodes, right? Okay.
That's what we're looking at.
Good deal. All right, so what we're looking at here is this is a change in a barcode, and all we did was change it from code 128 barcode to a UPCA code. There are restrictions for UPCA codes. You can't barcode alphanumeric characters, so you'll either get some kind of an error or it'll actually be a barcode that will be unreadable. You won't be able to scan it. It'll print just fine, but you'll never be able to scan it. So let's go back and talk about the size of this barcode. I can hit escape, back to my keystroke here, F3 to edit this. Get to the alignment field, I'm going to hit F1 again, and this is where I will have to change. It takes a second, so be patient with the F1 help coming up. I'm going to already kind of zip into that barcode area again. You may not see it quite yet. But then it talks about, after the B and the format code, enter the barcode size information. So I'll click on this link here. And they pretty much talk about the first three characters. We had a 3, a 2, and a 1. So what we had was the height of the barcode was set to 3. That's kind of almost 3 lines. The barcode width was set at a 2. And the ratio is set at a 1. And nowadays it's very hard to change the ratio on a laser printer, but that's the space between the white and the black marks. But in this example, it could be a 221 or a 111. So I'm going to just change it to extremes to see what happens to the barcode with the UPCA code. So let me get back to Keystroke here, make sure it comes back. So here we have the B, the 1 is the UPCA, and then what follows it is the height 1, width 1, and ratio 1. And I have not tested this, but let's see what happens with Shift F10. There we go, sorry. Shift F10 right here. I've been printing the same item just to kind of show the contrast between them. Then I hit escape. So notice here the barcode still exists. It's much smaller. So if people want to kind of work on making smaller barcodes and scrunching things up, now I would almost guess some of these barcodes like this one here, these are the same numbers. They look different, but when I print them they actually look kind of the same. If I resize this, you kind of see how the barcodes are maybe changing. They're really not. They're actually identical, but it's just the way this, what you see on the screen is different. So I'm going to close this. But without recreating the wheel, by the way, if I were to hit F10 to save this, it's going to tell me in Label Manager it's slightly different. You can't save these tag forms that start with an underscore. It's just the way we had made it back in the day. So I would have to change this to something different, like let's call it barcode PC without the underscore, and I might add some words that help me realize what it is. So now it's on my list and I can pick it off the list. But let's take a look at some other options. This form here, barcode with the stock number, can be used. It's pretty much the same form as the other one. It's just using the stock number instead of the product code, and you can tell Keystroke to actually do an alternate search. If it can't find the stock number, it can go ahead and find Keystroke can find it by the stock number if it can't find it by the product code. Let's just go ahead and do a Shift F10 on this, print this one. And so notice now that the barcode again has gotten a little smaller, even though it's the same height and width and ratio. It's actually barcoding this stock number 121 underneath of it. But you have the human readable product code, so they can actually type that in if they needed to. I think we have one more form I'd like to show you in Label Manager if I can find it. It's the we had a 6 across, I believe it was. The small tag here. Well, here's a 1x1 8 across that actually is barcoded. I'm going to use the stock number 1. Here, notice some things. First of all, the number across tells it how often to do it. This is also Label Manager is an art form. You have to figure out the spacing of everything. If you've noticed, all like the line number 3s add up to a certain number, which is 14, 16, 17. All the line 4s are 17, and so forth. So let's go ahead and print this, and same item, same quantity, and see what it looks like. So here's a form that's kind of already been created for us, so you don't have to recreate the wheel. There are a lot of forms to choose from, so you might start with always one that you like. Looks like this one could use a little work in moving over the price a little bit. And there's other features. Why don't we tinker with that just a second? Now, this is a perfect example for both the report editor and label editor. Notice that this field, first of all, is called an inventory calculated field. Again, this is a selected price. You're going to say, well, what is that? I'll show you what that means, and we'll go ahead and I'm going to save this as a different name. Select it. Up here, you can tell it what the price is that you actually want to print. I can always print the base price, but the current price might be, let's say in the month of December you have a Christmas sale and you want to relabel everything or relabel some items with the sale price. That might not be the sale price because you might have a price table. So the current price, whatever you pick here in this field, printed price, base price, or the current price based on the price table, like employee discounts, you could print labels for employees, that is going to go into the form. So I'm going to F3 on this. So let's go down to this field here. I'm going to arrow down a little bit. This might be easier for y'all to read. So we're going to look at this. This is actually the selected price. So this goes back to the previous screen and says, what prices are you going to print today? Or are you going to use a price table? If you take a form and you hard code in the base price, you're going to have people calling and saying, why isn't it showing me the right price? The one that's being sold in Sales Manager, because you don't want to say, you know, $1.99 on the tag, but somehow it's something different in Sales Manager. So we're going to do the selected price. I think this needed a space before it because it was hanging to the left. We have some field flags I'm going to use here. I'm going to add the currency symbol. A lot of people spend a lot of time just typing in that one currency symbol and then it skews everything over. But if I add this in, then this entire field includes the actual currency symbol, and that can change if you're not in the United States too. So I'm going to hit F10, Shift F10 here, brings up the list, and let's put the same item. And here it says the base price is $154, by the way. Let's see what happens when I print it. Okay, it came up with $154. And I think when I put that one space in, what it did is it kept adding one more space at the end of every line. So by the time it gets to the 8th label, it's added in 8 spaces. Again, practice and patience. We'll see what I did wrong. Maybe when I added in this one space here, I shouldn't add in 7 extra spaces at the end of it. So I'm going to bring that down by 1. I've changed a 7 down to a 6 with the left control left arrow. Shift F10, let's see what this looks like. There, I've taken out a little bit of that, and it looks like it could still take out one more character. At least it's not hanging as far over. They're all on the tag. That's an accomplishment. But I kind of really want it to be lined up exactly. So I'm going to hit Escape here. I've changed, you probably don't see the screen changing as fast as I'm moving here, but I've changed that, what was a 7 to a 6 to a 5. So we're going to hit Shift F10 and print the same thing again. Pretty close here. These spaces before and stuff actually are putting in pica spaces. So there is an art form about the ability to add in spaces before a field or after it. And so it takes a little bit of work. I wouldn't get too caught up on it. The idea is if you get all the information on a tag, one tag between another won't be all that different, but I could spend a little time and probably get this all fixed up with taking out the spaces before and on this line here, because the space before is actually a pica character, and then it's printing in condensed. And actually, I'm sorry, this might have, I see it, so it's turning condensed on and then not turning it off. I see. Okay, that's why it's slightly different. So by the way, print codes, I was in the print code field, I hit insert. It just tells you what kind of fonts and stuff you're going to turn on and off. Normally that should be a 780 like the other one below it, and so forth. So that's kind of a summary right there of label editing. I'm going to kind of go back to my slideshow here. First, I'm going to show you one last time what we ended up with here. And if I just blow this up, these barcodes would all pretty much represent the same thing as they're printed. I think it's the way our report editor shows things are slightly different. So let me jump back. I think we spent a little over half an hour. I'm going to jump back into this slide to kind of recap what we've gone through. And at the same time, I'm going to open up the microphones. So if anyone has any questions, let's go ahead and unmute all. And I did want to talk about the just some of the tricks. I was using this all the way through this programming here. I was using the F3 twice on the report settings screen to immediately get into edit mode. Once I made my changes, I used Shift F10 to do a quick test print before saving the form. Once I save the form, then I have to go select the form, and then I have to say OK, and then I have to put in the date range, and then I have to say OK, and then I can see my report. When you're making little column changes, just use Shift F10 or the test button on the lower left. I was also using the control left and right arrows to be able to quickly go make columns bigger and smaller and so forth. Also, I didn't show you this, but the control left, E and R would have changed the alignment. It doesn't do anything with barcodes. You have to go in there. You have to understand the codes and so forth. And we just touched base on the F1 report, but I'm going to go back to Keystroke because this is important. We can't, I'm going to go ahead and, if there aren't any questions right now, mute everybody at this time. What you can't do, I'm going to go back to Keystroke. There are a lot of fancy things in Keystroke that you can really do. Some of them can be different formulas and equations and so forth. I'm going to take a sales transaction report and show you, but not really explain what's going on here. This is a basic sales transaction report. Let's go ahead and run it once just to the screen. It's going to ask me for a date range. This is a summary report here to the screen. Hopefully you'll see it in a second or so. And basically it has some different options and it looks very simple. But it actually has a line 1. There's an option to do detail for every single transaction. Then there's an option down here to change the word amount due to deposit and things like that. So let me show you some calculations. I wouldn't spend too much time trying to understand it until the day you need it. But let's go ahead back to Keystroke and look at just this simple form here. Here's a variable that's being used, and it uses kind of an at-if statement, and I'll show you the F1 help in a moment about all the different functions. And then it uses a variable that we've already created called amount due, and it's saying if there is an amount due, then it asks again if the transaction is a V, which means it's sales invoice, then print the word amount due. Otherwise, print the word on deposit. So there's a kind of a variable thrown at you there. Here is the at sign that says go ahead and use the at sign if it's the quantity ordered equals 1. Then there's the due amount, which is actually dictated here on line 3, and it's telling us about the same thing. That's talking about if it's an invoice, then the amount due is the amount due. But if it's not an invoice, then the amount due is going to be the total minus the amount due, which is what the on deposit is. So let's take the same report untouched. I'm just going to show you that these exist, but not explain them too much in detail. I'm going to go ahead and run this just one more time to the screen. This is for sales invoices, and it says the word sales invoice at the top, and you'll see the word amount due is down here. So there's a total of 4,100, total paid, and then amount due. I'm going to change this report on sales orders so that all I'm changing is the report to talk about orders or any other transaction type that's not a invoice. Because an order, if nothing's been paid, all of it's due, even though you haven't shipped anything. That's kind of the reasoning behind the logic of those variables. So here's a case here where I don't think it came up right, but I only had one sales order in this data. Talks about the total, none was paid, so there is an amount due of 10. It actually should be showing that, I believe the word's on deposit. I'll have to check that later. Let's go back into Keystroke and look one more time at the help screen about variables. So if I'm down here in the variables field and I hit insert and ask me for a formula, this is the time to hit F1 for help. So I'm going to hit F1. Let me change screens and give it time to catch up here. This is very important to get to these the formula operators. Those are the common things we all know. I'm going to click on that. It's things like the plus, minus, all the arithmetic ones, multiply. It talks about begins with, does not contain, is greater than, and stuff at the bottom. I'm going to go back here. You would never be able to remember all that stuff, so you have to kind of come back to these help screens. We talked about formula functions, so let's click on that. Here we have like an if-then-else statement, and so if I click on this if-then-else, we were just using that. It talks about add if, and the expression is what you're going to look for, and if it's true, do the true part. If it's false, do the false part. That's kind of what that's saying. It gives you a slight little example here. It says if the inventory price is greater than 0, print the inventory price. Otherwise, print the word needs price. That's what this little example is for. Some new kind of functions is the @wrap was added in later version 7.15. That's to be able to wrap a description and actually wrap it at the space between its names. So if the description was hardbound cover book, 4 words, it would find the space after like hardbound, put it on one line, and then covered book at the bottom line. The right characters, middle characters to the end, and so forth. You can convert dates to text and the day of the week and so forth. Clicking on any of these kind of usually should give you a good example. Here's an @wrap. The inventory description starts at character 1 and prints 20. And then the @wrap description goes from the end 20 back until, and then if you only have, let's say, 15 as your width, then it's going to know where to cut things off and so forth. All right, back to our presentation. I'm going to go ahead and unmute us for one last time for any questions. Again, today was kind of a way to kind of get your feelers out for report editing. There's some complexities to it. There's, like I said, practice and a little bit of patience and a little bit of skill over time helps. We're here to help too. And if there are any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll just talk.
Mike, I'd like to add one quick thing. February this year is the Keystroke Live theme for the entire month is going to be on different aspects of reporting. So I thought I'd throw out that Sid Winlock in Sacramento is having a end user training for 2 days on the 26th and 27th that focuses on reporting, and the report editor is going to be covered on Saturday. It's open to anybody who wants to attend. It's half price for dealers, a representative from dealerships. It's $295 per person for end users to attend. So if anyone is interested or has a customer that might be interested, let me know and I can send you the training flyer.
Good. Thanks, Nick.
Yep.
That's good info. Well, great. If there aren't any questions, we'll wrap this up. And then next week, Dave Hunsinger will be talking about report filters. And like Nick said, then I think Lynn has another topic on reports the week after that. All right. Well, thank you for your time. If you have any questions, give us a call here at SBS.